Greetings, welcome to part 1.2 of viewers' comments and questions.
Yeah, hello. We're doing this because we had a network or internet problem last night on VCQ, so we're just going to record the answers and stick it out as a regular video. Huge apologies to everyone who missed it, and to those of you who look forward to VCQ every Monday night. We certainly do.
We do indeed, and we're going to get it sorted.
We are going to get it. We're going to get a person in who knows networking to diagnose and fix the problem.
Indeed. Going to get a man in.
Yeah, or any person for that matter. Daniel. Okay, so we'll go on with the super chats. We're picking up from where we left off on the live stream. The podcast will have all of the above in it. Kelly McClure was next in with a question. If you're confused, by the way, we do a thing on a Monday called Viewers, Comments and Questions where we take live questions. This is what that is.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday morning.
It is Tuesday morning.
But you don't need to know that. Kelly McClure. Hello, Kelly. Kelly says, good morning from Southwest Oklahoma.
Oh, lovely.
I hold you both totally responsible for the vast capital outlay of pedals and amps that I've accumulated. It's glorious. How do you prefer your wet-dry rig? Do you prefer it side by side or stacked?
Oh, great question. I like it stacked, actually. I think it works really well. Either is great. If you have the room and you can get a bit of separation on them, as long as they're equidistant from you, great. But actually, when they're stacked, it's still very cool because what happens is you get this, you're not getting a left and right separation. It's coming straight down the same line. And the great thing about wet dry is that it's not about being left and right.
Yeah.
It's about having one amp that's getting the majority of the transient, you know, without all the wet stuff, and then the wet stuff on top. So the stack thing works brilliantly.
Yeah, it really does. If you do some reading on something called line arrays, it's how certain PA systems are arranged. And there's some science that says the horizontal spread of a line array is actually better than a horizontal spread of speakers, which do better like that. A line array apparently does better like that. Don't ask me about the science. It's a thing. So yeah, either way, I ultimately prefer them next door to one another. But for space reasons, have often done the vertical thing, which is cool too.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't have much stage footprint, the vertical thing can be the only way to do it. Ian Harrison. Hello, Ian.
Hello,
we saw Ian on our experience day on Friday. It was great to meet you, Ian, and hear you play, buddy.
Yeah, cool. What a great guitar player.
He says, Legends, thanks for an awesome time at the experience day on Friday. It was a blast to meet you both finally. The day flew by. What's the best live guitar rig you've ever heard in person?
Joe Bonamassa, Royal Albert Hall. Being on stage with that. As he's like, okay, this is my normal sound. Wow. And then my different boosts are just more amps being kicked in. Oh, man. Amazing.
I'm inclined to agree with Dan, although just to offer a different one, I would say maybe Eric Johnson. I've stood next to Eric Johnson's rig on stage and heard him blast the Marshall and the Fenders clean and dirty, which is a biblical experience for obvious reasons. The crank plexi.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to throw in Brad Paisley at the O2 was pretty mad as well.
Yeah. In the 90s, Steve Morse did a gig in Sydney, the Harbourside, and I was right in front of his amps, and it was truly spectacular. But yeah, being on stage with Joe doing his thing,
it was
just unbelievable.
A different sport.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And
how dynamic that was. So being at the gig, and because I remember, bless him, Joe and Josh had got us great tickets, like right in front. And having been on stage and heard it, I thought, this is, because they're on stage and it's great. I thought this is going to really hurt. And not for a second.
Yeah.
I had the earplugs ready, not for a second. And it was so beautiful because there's one solo he did that I'll never forget. they're playing the tune, and then bang, the banjo comes down, and he's on the telly, and he winds the volume control down, and he starts to play, and you can literally hear the pick on the string, and the band's just quiet, and you could hear a pin drop in the whole Royal Albert Hall. And he starts to play, and then for the next 10 minutes, it builds and builds and builds, and by the end, the whole Royal Albert Hall are on their feet, just going, yeah! It was epic.
There you go. What do we say? With great headroom comes great responsibility.
Indeed.
Thanks for the question, Ian, and it was really lovely to meet you, mate. David Sisbaro is on. Hi, David Sisbaro. Great question from David. He says, with the recent release of pedals emulating studio gear, how would you set up a pedal board with a compressor, for example, an 1176 or an LA2A, a 610 mic pre, which is a famous UA mic pre, valve mic pre, Pultec EQ and tape machine? Would it be the same order as a studio?
So it all depends on the job that they're doing. So if you're using your LA2A compressor the same way as you would do a Dynacomp, then yeah, because you're still, no matter how good the gear is, you're still into gain staging. You're still into understanding the job that it's doing and how that affects what's going on for the rest of the signal chain. However, if you're thinking of using the compressor more as a mastering thing and putting it right at the end of everything, that can be great as well. Also certainly with the Pultec, and of course the tape, it's got to go.
Tape's got to go at the end.
Yeah.
It just has to. Yeah, I would do it in a studio way because my brain wouldn't be able to accept it any other way. But you're into a weird world there. I think to be sort of borderline controversial, if you listen to a really, really good digital modelling device, that's sort of what you're hearing. You're hearing a pretty reasonable recorded guitar sound.
Right.
With all of that stuff kind of built into it. So if you pull up a model of something, it tends to sound like a fairly nicely recorded version of it. It doesn't sound anything like the visceral connection of it being there in the room.
Yeah, but that's the difference, right? It'd be to actually have the studio gear, and we've experienced that ourselves, moving on from plugins to the real thing, and it's like,
Yeah, it's less about that and more about what your goal is.
Yeah, sure.
It's a very different experience to stand in front of a sort of visceral, let's take our favourite example, Edward Van Halen. If you were stood in the tracking room with Ed's Marshall, it would have been a brutal, unpleasant, hurty sort of experience. As glorious as playing as it would be, physically it would be scary, it would hurt your ears, you wouldn't want to be in there for very long. But you'll listen to, Van Halen records all day long. Why? Because it's gone through all that stuff and is only coming out at 85 dB out of your speakers, and all that brutality has been taken away by the recording process. If you do that, and that's what's coming out of your amp in the first place, you might find it a bit flat.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If you were going to put all those pedals together and just kind of go for that perfectly recorded sound, that's my point about digital modelling.
Sure.
It really doesn't have anything to do with that visceral, brutal experience of standing in front of a guitar amp, which is what me and Dan are going to be doing all afternoon this afternoon.
Indeed, something very, very special.
Yeah, but yeah, I would go with the studio order, but then given that they're pedals in a studio, you've got to like repatch everything, and it's a giant pain in the arse. If you've got them on pedals, you can just move your patch cables around, or even better, if you've got something like G3, you can move the order of the loops around and try it all different ways. Yeah. Dan and I, if this question comes after the compressors show, Dan is a huge fan of compressor as effect.
Yeah.
So the diamond compressor doing the squash.
Yep. Because that's such a classic sound.
Yeah.
The way it works on guitar, and I love that sound. As opposed to, is the compressor on or is it off? Is it just tickling? That's really cool too.
Yeah. So and I prefer it the other way. I prefer the studio type compressors after gain, after everything, as a sort of final shaper if I'm going to use one at all. So try it.
Yep.
I think, as he said right at the beginning, try it both ways.
Indeed.
Yeah. Cool. Nice question. Joe Caliguri. Hi, Joe. Joe Caliguri says, Dan, did you ever listen to Silverchair?
Oh, yeah.
From back home. They're my favourite band. Their last 3 albums were brilliant. Much love and thanks for all you guys do.
So when they first came out, and they were very young.
What was his name? Daniel
Johns.
Johns, yeah.
And they came out at a similar time as Nirvana. In Australia, they were called Nirvana in Pyjamas, taken after the Bananas in Pyjamas, because they were so young.
Yeah, yeah.
But very quickly...
They were like Rock Hansen, were they?
Yeah, sort of. Because
Come
they
on,
were,
that was a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just
But,
a joke.
you know,
and
they
no
were-
disrespect to Hansen either.
Yeah. Bop. So very quickly, though, that went.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, actually, hang on.
Yeah, really serious.
These guys are amazing. And
Didn't he marry Natalie
Natalie
Imbruglia?
Imbruglia. Yeah. Yep. Their output has been consistently fantastic. And, you know, you remember that they were, I think Tomorrow was their first single. So, very interesting story about that. Triple J released their single in Australia, and it was this massive hit. And it was, I'm pretty sure that single was like the demo, or they recorded it at some little studio.
It's Triple J.
Triple J is a radio station,
Oh, okay.
like an independent radio
Did
station.
it stand for anything?
JJJ.
All right.
And they released
Jackson.
they
Jackson.
they released that song Tomorrow, and it was a brilliant song. You could tell it was been recorded a bit rough,
Right.
but it was epic. And I think they went to LA and re-recorded the song, and came back, and it was all polished and sounded great.
Like Whitesnake after the change.
But it didn't have the same
Yeah.
punch that the original did. Anyway, I could be wrong on all counts, but I remember when they played the redone version on the radio, it's like, oh no, there's something that the original had that was just so And then they started touring, and they turned into this wicked three-piece. Daniel's a great singer, great frontman, so talented. And they've kept producing, and yeah.
Do I remember him having a silver PRS?
Oh, he's had lots of things.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if we put them on the cover of Guitarist, but they were certainly a contender
Yeah.
for that for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And presumably they're still
Still doing it.
doing it. Awesome. Mike 2203. Hello, Mike.
Hello,
nice to
Mike.
hear from you. He says, do you ever look at the Gardner Holgate 3-day guitar auctions in Corsham? Just 20 miles from TPS. Some interesting stuff there. It's held every 3 months.
I haven't.
Yeah, I do all the time. Have a look through the catalogue. We know some people there and some people involved in that. They get some cracking stuff through. The only trouble with auctions is it's all too expensive. Plus the auctioneer's premium. It all goes for more money than it should.
Right. Oh, really?
Yeah, well,
Everyone gets excited about
it's
the
kind of
buying process.
perhaps a bit of a generalisation. I bought a couple of EV speakers from there
Oh,
a
okay.
few auctions ago.
Do you go down there and someone's going, hey, that's a funny
Flying V. It's exactly like that.
I got to go now. I've got to go now.
Cows, sheep, ducks.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, busty maidens. All those things.
So,
66 scrap. So sorry, it wasn't. What was his name? Twiggy from Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. It wasn't that. Hello, Buck. God, what about Wilma? Anyway, yeah, and actually there are a few little, sometimes like Marshall column speakers come up and nobody
wow.
wants. So you can get stuff like that, and they have really good studio stuff. So yeah, it's totally worth keeping an eye on. But of course, the banner guitars, sometimes they'll have they usually have a couple nice 60s Strats, 50s ES. They have really nice stuff. So yes, thanks for the shout, Mike. For those of you who aren't aware, it's called Gardner Holgate, I think, or Holgate, Gardner Holgate Guitar Auctions in Corsham in Wiltshire, and definitely worth a look.
cool.
Some super sexy stuff on there. Daniel Thornton. Hi, Daniel. He says, I have a stereo pedal that's in one of my runs after the split in my wet-dry setup. Rather than run it mono out, could I use one of the outputs to the second channel on my AC15 without phase problems? The ABY has phase invert.
So, yeah, you can do that. Okay.
So we're going guitar, bunch of effects, split, amp 1,
Yep.
and in amp 2 is a stereo delay pedal. In line 2 is a stereo delay pedal
Right.
going to an AC15. So can we come, in addition to going out to amp 1, can
Yep.
we come stereo out of...
And then come into amp 1 as well.
No, amp 1 stays as it is. Stereo outs from this delay pedal go into both channels of the AC15.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can do that, but it doesn't really make any sense because you're summing, the stereo delay pedal is summing internally. What happens if you go stereo out into channels 1 and 2 of the amp? You're getting a bright delay and a dark delay, and it doesn't. I mean, by all means, try it, and you might think it's the best thing in the world. I'd be very surprised if you found that.
You will
worked.
need to flip the phase out of one of the outputs because the channels in the AC15 are out of phase.
Oh, the normal channel and the
Yeah, so you're just sending a stereo out from the stereo pedal, which are going to be the same phase, polarity, should we say, to be correct about it. Once they hit the AC15's two channels, those two channels are out of polarity, so you'll need to flip one. However, let's change the game and say, back to what you were implying earlier, let's say the dry amp is the AC15.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got few pedals, split.
Mm-hmm.
This channel goes off to an AC15.
Mm-hmm.
This channel with the stereo delay pedal goes off to a deluxe reverb. Could we come...
The other side back into the other channel on the AC15.
Yeah, so we've got one channel in the AC15 doing dry, and we've got the other side doing the left.
Yeah, and you absolutely can do that. What would be really interesting if you could...
I think that sounds pretty cool, actually.
It
if you
would
get the
work.
polarity sorted...
It would work, but what you're missing then, because don't forget, you've got the transient coming from the split, right, going to the dry amplifier. Then you've got all those other stages that you're going through and then coming out back into the dry amplifier. So you'll be mixing the left signal or the right signal with the other side of the wet. Look, it can totally work, and give it a go. I think if you just took that and plugged into have another deluxe reverb, put it on the other side of the Vox, and away you go. Wet, dry, wet. Give it a go. Give it a go.
Give it a go.
Yeah.
I think it could be quite nice because you've got completely independent control of that second delay.
Yeah.
It's not like it's mixed in with any... Well, it's mixed in once it starts coming out the speaker, but it's not mixed in with... It's not monkeying around with your dry sound until it comes out the speaker. So you could just mix a tiny bit of it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got independent control over the delay on each side, that could be interesting. But yeah. I think give it a go. I'd be really interested to hear the results.
Yeah. What you're barking towards is wanting wet, dry and a stereo delay on the end, isn't it? And there might be a better way to achieve that.
Yeah. Yeah, if your delay has stereo ins, you could put that at the end of everything. That would be a better way to do it.
Yeah. Byron Krause's Big Dog.
Yeah.
Hello, Byron Krause's Big Dog. He says, hope you're well, Leggins. I love the Boss SD ones so much.
Yeah.
Lately, I use it into a crunchy amp for my high gain sound. How does the SD1 and the OD3 differ? Any chance of a comparison du jour?
The OD3 has got the tone control.
OD3, I think, was my first ever overdrive pedal.
Yeah.
And then I was confused. I just used to buy yellow ones.
Right.
Because there was the OD3, there was the turbo overdrive.
Turbo overdrive was...
With the switch on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had that. That was my birthday present when I was
Obviously,
14.
OD1 was nowhere near as good because it didn't have as many knobs.
And then I had the distortion feedbacker, but that was orange.
Yeah. It's a good
But I love that. It's
distortion
like,
colour.
whee! sound nothing like feedback. But it was like,
There's just a little guy in there going, ah. Yeah, I think that's a good shout, because that's not a question that we can answer with any sort of knowledgeable words without actually plugging them in and having a listen. I want to say the SD one's basically a tube screamer, but asymmetrically clipped, isn't it?
yes, it's still op amp based. But yeah, there's the
They
clipping
don't
is
sound
different.
similar, by the way.
No.
We did do
And the
an SD one and tube screamer in a band context, if you want to watch that.
and the EQ is a bit different.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, great.
Thank you for the suggestion. Jim B, hello Jim. He says, hi DNM. I get a tick sound when my string meets the frets. I guess it's a ground, but where should I start? Thank you for creating this community.
So
Okay.
it won't be when your string meets the frets. It'll be when your fingers touch the strings.
If it's a ground.
If it's a ground thing. So if you get when your strings meet the frets, then it's
Could that be the sound of the string on the frets?
I've never heard a tick sound when
Just do that again. Is it this sound? I thought you were going to play. I don't know if the strings will probably be wrong, but
No, that's but that's at this end.
there you go.
Idiots. Oh boy.
There's a whole tangent there that begins with how the hell do you know that? But that's the way that's why we're here, isn't it? Yeah. As he said, the ground should be created when you touch the strings, not when the strings touch the frets.
Yeah.
So maybe it is literally the physical noise of the string hitting the fret. Stainless steel frets by any chance?
Yeah.
They might be louder than nickel silver frets.
So if that sound is when your fingers touch the strings, that's normal. What happens is you've got the ground or the earth or the shield, whatever you want to call it, the outside part of the
I like the idea of shield.
shield. And then there's a wire that goes through and connects to the bridge, which then connects to the strings, so that you are part of that ground circuit, which is why it's such a dangerous idea to have the earth removed from the amp, because when you touch the microphone and the amp's looking for an earth to go through, if it doesn't have an earth and it's floating, you become the pathway. And then, anyway.
You are the pathway.
So, if what you're saying is when you do this, it goes, it's, I mean, the ticking thing
Kind of normal.
would still, it's very normal for it to go and then quiet when you touch the strings. But yeah, and without actually being here and troubleshooting from afar is nigh on impossible. But if it concerns you, give someone a call and see if you can do a process of elimination with them and work out what it is.
Tick busters. Mason did a really good interview with Ray Parker Jr.
Really?
And I didn't realise Ray Parker Jr. is a guitar player.
Right.
And he's there playing the Ghostbusters theme.
Wicked.
Anyway, good luck with that. Jim, aka Titanium Gecko, aka Titanium Gecko says, evening from Derby. Hello, Derby. He says, what amp would you pair with a Blackstar Studio 10, which apparently has one EL34 tube for wet dry?
Princeton.
He took the words right out of my mouth.
I heard
but
him on
not
the
the
radio.
second bit.
I heard him on the. I met Meatloaf. He was such
you?
a lovely guy. So
He's shorter than you would imagine, isn't he?
yeah, yeah. He was still, but it was Meatloaf. It's like that's Meatloaf. It's
Is
the
he actually
posing-
made of meatloaf?
Yeah, he was delicious.
Carve a bit off.
Delicious.
Yeah.
But he was. We were doing this when I was.
Actually, he is R.I.P., isn't he?
He is. He is
Bless
no
him.
more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, R.I.P. Meatloaf.
Yeah. But he was such a lovely, lovely guy.
Yeah, everyone. A lot
When
of
he
people
had
said
no,
that.
yeah, when he had absolutely no reason to give us the time of day. So we was doing a gig with Max Sharam, and we were playing this conference, and he was comparing it,
Oh well.
and you know it's like this big like loads of money, and I said let's get Meatloaf to do it, great, and he was just the loveliest guy, and he was hilarious. He was absolutely hilarious. He had us all just before the curtains opened. He had us all wetting ourselves.
What was his
Great.
name? Was his name Jim?
Jim
No.
Loaf.
No. Anyway, doesn't matter. Yeah, we would say a Fender Princeton.
Would
Would
be
be great.
such a great
AC15
pairing.
would be great.
But if it's the 10-inch speaker,
Well, it says Studio 10. I think that might mean 10 watts.
okay.
Or it might not. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Princeton then, because it does
Princeton.
have a 10. And also a Pro Junior. Fender Pro
Oh.
Junior would be a great shout.
Nice.
The reason we talk about 10 and 12s is you can get a bit of phasey weirdness if you've got a 10 and a 12. It particularly bothers Dan, bothers me a bit less. But where the phase relationship, the polarity relationship, actually it's a phase relationship.
It's a phase relationship.
Where the phase relationship between two 12s is more consistent, between a 10 and a 12 it can be slightly weirder.
Yeah, it's harder to. If you record it, you can see the thing, but it's harder to work out just
Yeah.
audibly.
Yeah. So my Dan's first choice would be a Princeton. Mine would probably be a Pro Junior.
Man, I wish I had a commission on how many Princetons sold from being over in the room on the experience days, because we plug the boards in there when we're going through it, and everyone just goes, "Oh man, that sounds amazing!" Like playing at home at low volume.
Yeah.
It's so open and lovely.
It puts out a ridiculous amount of bass for a tiny amp.
Yeah, it's incredible. Incredible.
Yeah. Sean Jeremy Latos. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Nice to hear from you, mate. He says, "Hi, D&M. I watched a video of Julian Lage. Is Lage correct? Or is it Lage?
Large.
Lager. Let's say Lage.
At large.
Let's say Lage. And if it's Lage or Lage
Yeah.
or
you
Le
could.
Age.
I did watch the interview with him with Rick Beato, and some of the stuff that he's just pulling out of the air, and Rick is just there going, was just
Oh, wow. Even Rick.
even Rick was just
Wow.
absolutely floored. He's a genius, an absolute genius.
Anyway, Sean says, I watched a video of Julian Lage describing resonance between acoustic guitar and your actual body on the acoustic guitar channel. Really insightful and reminded me of how you describe the ecosystem.
Go and check out the interview that we did with Jocelyn Gould, and she does this amazing demonstration of how she sits with the guitar, and she says, right, listen to it when I hold it against my body, and she plays, and then she goes, now if I play it here, and it sounds completely different. It's amazing. So yeah, that the way the wood vibrates, and you know,
The way you vibrate.
yep,
Yeah,
your
it is an
resonant
ecosystem, isn't it?
your resonant frequency.
I've been doing a bit of sharpening of my writing brain muscle just
Really?
recently. Yeah. I used to write a lot, and I really enjoyed writing, and I've got some writing to do. So I bought a really good book, and it talks about something called object writing. And what you do is you pick an object, and you say, just write for 10 minutes about that mug.
Okay.
And the observation is made that what most people will do is the observations will be almost entirely visual.
Okay.
But you've got 5 senses. plus two others: your kinesthetic sense, which is your sense of your relationship to the outside world,
Okay.
and another word which I can't remember, personal sense,
Your sixth sense.
which is
where you see dead people.
yeah.
Right.
Oh man,
I see
I
dead bugs.
yelled at the TV at the end of that movie. You can't do that. You can't go. It's all a dream.
It was our dream.
And your sense of what's happening in your own body.
Right.
So you've essentially got these 7 senses to draw on, and therefore, as an exercise of creative writing, you can draw on each of those senses about that mug. You know, what does the drink inside it smell like? What's the texture of the outside of the cup feel like? How does it manifest in your blah blah blah? Anyway, so you can be much more creative than just describing what it looks like. The same is true in the auditory world. We think sound is about what comes in here,
Oh, okay.
and it just isn't.
Yeah.
It's a complete sensory experience, and that, I think, by way of long tangent, is what we're talking about when we talk about the ecosystem, and what Mr. Large is talking about when he's talking about that symbiosis. And all of that stuff is just so lost when you call up YouTube and watch 2 idiots demoing some pedal you want to buy, and you go, "Oh, it sounds great." It's like, it's that much of the story in this story, which is why you have to get it in your hands and feel it and play it and do all those things.
Indeed.
Soapbox over. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's
It was
quite
a nice
motivating,
soapbox.
actually.
Yes. Now I'm going to describe the soapbox
Yeah.
for 5 minutes.
It's a book on writing lyrics by, and I forget the guy's name. Apologies. Maybe I'll put a link in the description. And I was thinking, Catherine bought it for me. And I was like, oh God, some dude telling me how to write. Don't want that. Forward is by Gillian Welch.
Oh, no way. I
And,
love her. She's amazing.
John Mayer was one of his students as well. And it's
Oh,
like, okay,
stop.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, but didn't he write that
Your body is a wonderland.
the immortal lyric, "Why you no love me"?
Yeah.
Love you, John.
Yeah. I think that's the equivalent of an outside harmonic extension. It's like, I know how to do this, and here's me proving.
Why you no love me?
Jake's showing me.
Is it that?
It is. What's the guy's name?
Pat Patterson.
Pat Pattison. There you go. It's a really good book, and
Was he a baker's man?
I thoroughly recommend it. Writing Better Lyrics by Pat Pattison. Let's move on. I said we were going to rattle through these, didn't I? G Barge is on. Hello, G. I'm really looking forward to meeting you this year. He says, peerless readers, the packaging from our latest TPS shipment, I'm just going to keep going, was so beautiful we just couldn't toss it away. My wife said, we've got to keep that. Thanks to Kay and all, love from Northern California. Thank you, G. We appreciate that.
We did,
And
G.
I'll make sure Catherine sees that message. We, the royal we takes a great deal of pride in making sure that stuff goes out in a enjoyable manner. So, and as ever, thank you for buying merch. We say it enough. It is what keeps the lights on. It is what keeps the show going. So thank you for buying merch.
Indeed.
It means everything to us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Joe Halliday.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, mate. Joe Halliday from Hello Sailor. He says, hey, guys, what a thought-provoking episode. Talking about the compressor episode last Friday. I've gone from removing my comp to copying Dan. Now I'm gassing for an airchild.
How good did that thing sound?
He says, what's going on with the metaphorical ship that is my tone, and who's at the helm anyway? Oh man, it reminds me of my Uncle Jack. He had this old Austin 1100, and he was quite a bit older, even though he's my uncle. He had this little wooden plaque on the dashboard that says, shut up, who's driving this ruddy car? And it's not even funny, it just reminds me of being in his car. Bless him. Oh. What was the question? Who's at the helm? Well, you are. Or maybe Dan is.
You can think you are. That's as long as you think you are, then that's good.
Airchild went over really well, didn't it? People liked it.
Yeah, it's such an interesting sounding compressor. It's like so unique.
Yeah, it's exactly what I want a compressor to do. So I think I was playing it when it. Oh well, I was enjoying the sound of it anyway.
Yeah,
and that's what I want a compressor to do. So I was kind of inspired by playing it, which is to say that I guess any of the others could inspire you in different ways, but that's what gets hold of me. And the lab does the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The lab's great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm back on the Diamond now. That's so good.
It is really good. The experience day on Friday, Dan's got the Diamond compressor, and just the way that tone knob works, and just the amount of comp, it's just quite. Sometimes on a compressor, you twiddle the knobs. It's like, is it doing anything?
Yeah.
Especially the compression knob, because it's a complex relationship of attack and release. But on that, it does exactly what you expect it to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does it beautifully.
Yeah. Sean Altman.
Hi,
Hello,
Sean.
Sean. Hello, gents. Question on the CXM78. Oh, here is a question that I've never understood. Maybe Dan can explain it.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding that it's some stereo to mono on the input. How might one use it within a wet-dry rig while still keeping wet effects isolated to 1 amp? I do this, so I know it works.
Okay. So the CXM is not alone in doing this, by the way. It's this very common way to make stereo happen. So you've got left and right input. Okay, so let's say you've got your ping pong delays. And they're pinging, they're ponging, everyone's happy. And then that left and right goes into the left and right input of the CXM. What happens there is that if you imagine it's analog drive-through, so the analog through on the output is you're still going to get your ping pong delays, right, on the dry sound. But what happens is it is summed at the inputs, and then the reverb is applied to both the pinging and the ponging
For the wet sound.
and then it creates a stereo image of that sound and sends that left and right, mixing that on top of the dry sound. So you still get your ping pong delays, and you get a stereo reverb image, but that stereo reverb image is created by summing the ping pong at the front.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's how it does that.
So I run mine in a standard wet-dry configuration with it on the end,
Yep.
basically. So I go overdrive pedals, split. This side goes down through mono delay and harmonious monk. This side nothing, and then it meets the CXM and goes out for stereo reverb. What I can tell you is that even when it's going through the CXM, the harmonious monk and the delay still only go to the dry amp.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you've still got, it still separates them.
Yeah,
It's only the reverb effect.
yeah.
And it's still a stereo reverb effect, but to create that, it takes both those images.
So are
sums
you
them.
saying that if I listened hard, I would be able to hear harmonic tremolo in the reverb of my dry amp?
If you killed the dry signal
Yeah,
on the CXM,
yeah.
you would hear a stereo reverb image, but you would hear the harmonic trem and the delay
In both sides.
in both sides, just in the reverb image.
Only in the reverb image, yeah, yeah. So it's still ostensibly wet-dry, and I still get that lovely, harmonic tremolo in one and not in the other, even with the reverb on, even though it might slightly be in the reverb tails. So yes, what he just said, it does some stereo to mono in the wet signal, but it doesn't. What it doesn't do is take your dry two signals in, sum them, and then output them as the same. It doesn't do that.
Exactly. No,
Yeah,
it keeps all that separate.
Yeah.
For a true stereo thing where they're not summed, you would need two separate reverb pedals. And the problem with that, what the CXM is doing is creating a stereo image from the inputs. And if you don't have the reverb engines linked like that, then what you get is just two completely different reverbs left and right. And that can be a cool thing, but it's not the stereo image that the CXM produces.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps, Sean. Adam Dobbs, hi Adam. He says,
Adam.
I'm getting hum on my ABY when I roll the volume back on my guitar. It's only on the isolated side when the buffer is off. Okay, so he's got an ABY switch that's splitting the signal. the buffer's off, and when he turns down his guitar, he's getting hum on the isolated side. Is it a ground issue? It's definitely the ABY, because I've tried taking it out of the chain and it doesn't happen.
It's, again, troubleshooting these things is really, really difficult. If you've got an ABY that has a transformer in it and you are not driving that transformer properly, or the impedance is off, you take the buffer out of it and then it's being driven by the impedance of your guitar. So what's going on is you've got, it sounds like you are, okay, if you've got both outputs on, then the output impedance of the guitar has to drive both of those outputs without the buffer. So it sounds to me like it's more an impedance thing. So when you, okay, here's what it is. You got a transformer in that, right? A transformer, it's an inductor, it's a coil, same sort of coil as the pickup on your guitar. When you wind the volume back and you're changing the output impedance because you've got this...
the transformer is in there to do the isolation job, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there'll be a buffer in there to drive that transformer. When you take that buffer out, what you've got is the input impedance of the transformers being loaded or being driven by the output from here. When you roll this back, you're getting... you get this impedance mismatch, and actually you'll get to a point where it's trying to drive the transformer, the primary, but it's not. There's not enough for, and it ends up coming back. Same sort of thing happens on a fuzz face, because the impedance of a fuzz face, because it's so low, when you start winding the volume back, and you get, because there's a relationship that happens. It's a backwards and forwards relationship. So yeah, same sort of thing happens with a germanium style fuzz face.
So that problem is alleviated when you turn the buffer on.
Exactly.
Fascinating. There you go. I hope that was instructive, Adam. So your solution is you do need the buffer on.
Yeah.
Or you could drive a buffer before the ABY.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you've got a buffer driving that transformer, it sounds great. There's no problem with having the buffer there at the end of the chain. It can be. If the isolated output sounds good with that buffer on, then you're good to go.
Leave it on. Knights of Tone, says G Barge.
Yeah,
Thank you, G.
Knights of Tone. Let's say tone.
Say T.
Very good.
Very good. Could you please expand on how the feel of a compression pedal affects how you play in the moment versus using, say, a plug-in later? Fairchild, for example.
Oh, okay.
In the box being in your...
like when you're mixing.
Yes,
post-recording.
in your... What am I looking for, Dan? Your audio interface.
Yeah.
So we're saying we stick a compressor to begin with, and we play, or we don't do that and we add it after. How does it feel? How does it affect the feel of what you're playing?
So it's very interesting, right? When you, if you're reamping something, for example, you've played and you've taken a DI out and you've recorded that direct into your interface. Your performances, depending on how you're recording, with lots of compression or lots of gain, whatever, are so different. And it's so dependent on how you feel when you are going for that take. And that's dictated by what all that stuff is doing. So of course, depending on the compressor, if you've got a really squishy compressor, it might be that you feel holding onto a note for a long time becomes a lot easier, and that will inform that performance. If it is,
Similarly on the attack of the note. So
exactly,
if Dan hits the guitar hard, without a compressor, you get all that transient. With the compressor, it's all gone.
Yep.
So that will affect naturally your attack to the guitar, because we talk about playing the guitar, but you're also playing the amp and all the pedals. They're still instruments, just not ones that are actually connected to your fingers.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, as opposed to once you've got your performance, and then your post compressing it. Obviously, it doesn't change the performance. It just changes the output.
Yeah, and it's important not to fall into a dichotomy there, because there is an argument that says, you know, you read it every now on a forum, well, the correct way to record guitar is to do it dry and the producer can add all of the effects they need. And it just becomes this false dichotomy. It's like, it's not that. It's be happy as the performer with a sound that you'll like, and everyone is happy in the sound of the music and that serves the song. And then if the engineer or producer wants to do something in post, that's up to them.
Yeah.
But it's not this kind of either or situation, is it?
Yeah. If you're recording and you're the artist, you need to give the producer something that you're happy with.
Yeah.
That reflects it being in that moment, and then it's out of your hands, and let the producer do his job.
Otherwise, get Chat Guitar Player to do it. That's what GTP actually stands for.
Chat
Did
Guitar
you know that?
Player.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hopefully that helps, G. And in your own experiments, you can probably hear a bit of that as well. Certainly, the effect of volume is also everything.
Yep.
Because that transient relationship changes as you play louder.
Very much so.
And then whether you rake the strings and eventually get there, or whether you hit it with a flat pick straight on, all of that's informed by what's happening in the compression.
Yep. I noticed that hanging out with Robin and watching him play, and his control on his right hand is like incredible, and being with it's beautiful. But his rhythm playing especially, and so all of that dynamic, whether he's going in for a lead or a solo, he just changes the tone with this. It's amazing. Any excuse to get Robin into the conversation?
Yeah. Stealing from the rich and giving to the poor as well.
Indeed.
You've missed 2 Robin Hood gags, Dan. Those things weren't funny at all. Glowing Bars. Hello, Glowing Bars.
Hello, Glowing Bars.
Cheers, Dan and Mick. Thanks for bringing up mental health as a topic. I'm the happy owner of your former KOT, Mick. Oh, nice. King of Tone. It shall not be flipped, says Colin.
Good man.
Obviously, it's up to you what you do with it, Colin. I did, in the sale material, said, please buy it to use it. If you have a heart to do that, because I priced it pretty fairly. Good. I hope you're enjoying it, Colin. I really do. Joshua Ray Summy. JRS. That's a guitar player's name. Joshua Ray Summy. What defines flange, univibe, and chorus from one another in terms of 100% wet sounds? I'm not a sine wave guy. Thanks for all you do.
Okay. The most important thing is delay time. On top of EQ and that sort of stuff, the general rule of thumb is that a flange effect has a shorter delay time.
Yeah, let's start with flanger and chorus, because they're one thing.
Yeah. So let's say, and it depends on how you measure your delay time. You'll hear that, flange is a millisecond, 2 milliseconds.
But just explain how it's created.
Okay. The way it's created, you've got a signal. That signal is split. One of those signals gets delayed. And then it also gets modulated. And then that signal is also fed back on itself.
Modulated in terms of time.
Modulated in terms of time, which gives you a pitch modulation.
Yeah.
So with a flanger, that delay time tends to be shorter than a chorus. If you measure the delay time from the center, from when it goes through 0, it might be 10 milliseconds, 15 milliseconds. Chorus generally has a longer delay time, 20 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds. But that delay time, as you modulate it and it gets shorter, can go back. It's for 20 milliseconds, might get back to 15, up to 25. Depending on if you've got loads of modulation but a low speed, or a little bit of depth and high speed. These are all different effects, but generally the chorus thing is modulated with longer delay times. It also doesn't have the same feedback circuit as a flanger does. So a flanger with a shorter delay time, and it's creating this thing called a comb filter. When you have these frequencies, so that's got your frequencies, right, and they're split, and then you start to move them. Some are in phase and some cancel each other out, some add, so you get this called a comb filter, which gives you that classic flanging sound. What happens then is that signal is fed back to the input of that delay, and you get that feedback thing, which is that jet.
The metallic-y.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the flanging is like, lots of people will listen to a tune and think it's a chorus where it's a flanger. It doesn't, it is semantics at that point, because they are very, very similar. Now, the not the Univibe.
Yeah.
It was the Univibe?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different thing.
The Univibe's a different thing. The Univibe's a phaser-based effect. Now, it's still time-based effect, but it's time-based. It's a very short thing. What happens is in a phaser, when you put a compressor, when you put a capacitor in a signal, you get this frequency-based phase, and it's very hard to. You wouldn't just put a capacitor in and go, oh, that's shifting the phase. Same way that if you flip a phase on an amplifier, you can't just sit there and go, oh, that's flipping the phase. But what happens is,
to move it.
If you move it, and the way that you move it is that you put a resistor on the outside of it and you change that resistance. So if you have a lot of resistance, more signals going through the capacitor. If you have less resistance, more signals going through the resistor. And what happens in a phaser, you have lots of these little things, and you put two of those circuits together, and that'll give you a phase shift of 45 degrees. Put four of them together, give you a phase shift of 90, blah, blah, blah. So it is still time. It's still a time-based thing, because it's that frequency thing that happens in the capacitor, but it changes depending on the amount of signal that goes through that resistor, right? And what we're doing in the phaser is we are modulating that resistance. And so you get this phaser thing. Now, the Univibe, it achieves this by using a thing called photocells, which is a light-dependent resistor. The resistance is changed by flashing a light on it, so it changes its state. In a Univibe,
There's 8 of them in a Univibe, isn't there?
You got 4,
something like that.
Yeah, 4. I think it's 4. There's 4.
Okay.
There's 4 is like a fancy 4-stage phaser. And so you see on a Univibe that you've got this little box, and there's a bulb in it, and the bulb flashes on and off, and that dictates what's going on with the phase circuit. The interesting thing about using a bulb is that if you think about the way a bulb turns on and off, and it has these different these luminosity levels, and that gives you that throb. When you hear a Univibe, it's almost like a heartbeat thing.
Yeah.
And that's down to the way that the bulb is reacting with the light-dependent resistors. And it's such a cool sound, but it is different to a phaser in that it's using the light-dependent resistor to do that, whereas a phaser will use an LFO, thing to do its stuff. Yeah, but anyway,
a
that's
more
the
linear.
difference. Yeah.
More linear kind of thing,
Yeah.
whereas an LDR, the light-dependent resistor, is much less linear and gives you that difference in sound. And then the different types of LDR make a huge difference to how the Univibe ends up sounding. So yeah, you've got Univibe and phase over on one side, and you've got flange and chorus over on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Hope that helps.
Yeah.
Hope that helps. Airfire Ed. Hello,
G'day,
mate.
mate.
He says, just wanted to shout out the guitar tones on the first Super Lung album with Sam Brooks, who often supports Newton Faulkner on tour. Classic 8-inch tweed boxy tones. Check it on BC.
Awesome.
BC?
Before Christ.
Before COVID.
BC.
BC?
Bandcamp.
There you go.
There you go.
Nice. We got there in the end. We will do, Ed. Thank you very much. As always, good to hear from you, buddy. Right. Moving along. Rhino Jam. Hello, Rhino Jam. New Guitar Day. In the spirit of fewer, more awesome guitars, we think this is a good strategy, by the way. I traded stuff for a 57 Gold Top. And I finally understand what those Les Paul people are on about. My new love is unpotted pickups. Thoughts on potted versus not?
So the potted pickups gives you less. If you use high gain and you use an unpotted pickup, what you'll do is you'll get squeal because the coil actually resonates and starts to vibrate, giving and starts to oscillate, giving you that squeal. The potted, they get wax in there, or whatever. It holds those coils in place, giving you a better chance of being able to get really high gain and not have the guitar crap the bed. But it fundamentally changes the sound of the pickup.
It's also not potted or unpotted. There are
Yes.
various stages of pot in the pickup. So the coils themselves, different levels of pot levels, the whole pickup, the material used. Just a quick chat with Matt at Monty's about this yields a whole encyclopedia of knowledge about the extent to which you can go. Very unusual to find a totally unpotted pickup. Like, at least the coils will have something on them.
Yeah.
The individual coils, blah, blah, blah. Some practical examples. My 57 Gold Top, true vintage, Gibson Custom, Murphy, pre-Murphy Lab. Has the Gibson Custom Bucker very lightly potted. I don't
Right.
want to say unpotted, but very lightly potted.
Yeah, nice.
It does not squeal. I don't get a squealing feedback with this guitar.
Sorry, I just had to resolve that.
The Pelham Blue SG that we had for a minute, Gibson Custom, same pickups, I believe, squealed like a banshee.
Yeah, okay.
And
Interesting.
you'd get up to high gain and you'd go from like, I really like you, to I love you on the volume pot there, and it would just start going weep, weep, weep. My point being, this doesn't squeal at all. Original bridge pickup, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a PAF or a patent number.
Paint number, I think. Yeah, 62. So I think they're paint number by then.
Yeah. Original PAF style patent number, Gibson humbucker. That does not squeal. If yours does, and you don't like it, change it out. But one of the cool things about a lesser potted pickup, if you don't play with high gain and it's slightly microphonic, is where you get a lot of that really cool vocal mid-range.
Yeah.
And so if you play with a cleaner sound and it doesn't squeal, all good.
Yeah.
It's only if you put more overdrive on and it starts to squeal, you might want to think about it.
Yeah.
And if that's actually the cause of it.
Yeah. As a kid growing up with humbuckers, and they're all, I was into the heavy stuff, and they're all, potted. I remember getting a set of Bill Lawrence pickups that were epoxy potted, and and that sounded fantastic. Exactly. You got to do the head. Are we doing that with Andy? Got to do that with Andy.
Yeah,
Very
if he
good.
can play it.
Yeah, he's going to play it.
I don't mean if he can play it. I mean he's going to have to play it.
He's going to have to play it.
Of course he can play it.
Yes.
The vocals might be a bit of a challenge, but
We'll each take a verse.
all right. Daniel Lee Roth.
Yeah. But as I moved on in my humbucker journey, and then it became less and less potted to the point now where they are it's vintage style.
I like them right
things.
on the edge.
Yeah.
Just so they don't squeal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck, Rhino Jam. Jonah Livingston. Hi, Jonah. He says, my 72 Gibson SG arrived on Saturday, and this is
Wow.
my first guitar with that true vintage feel. It's nearly impossible to put it down. Thanks for the inspiration and much love from Raleigh, NC.
Oh, lovely.
NC, North Connecticut, maybe?
Yeah.
Good. Hope you enjoy that.
Beautiful.
There's a different thing, is a vintage guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's as much as we'll
Yeah,
say.
exactly.
Not aligned. Freddie Albert or BB?
BB.
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's all of them, obviously, depending on how you feel. Because Dan's chosen BB, I'm going to choose Freddie.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
Albert. It's just too grumpy.
Dude, I just had this conversation, and it was so interesting.
Just too grumpy.
Yeah, but there's just joy in BB's playing. Yeah, that's pretty grumpy.
The vibrato was there.
That's it. That's great. I like it.
That's my Albert King impression,
Okay.
which would, in better times would be.
Yeah, I love that line.
Yeah, yeah. That's why. No, he would never have played that. And there'd be no Stevie without Albert.
No, it's true. So I've got a lot to be grateful for Albert, but there's just so much joy in
Freddie.
BB's playing.
There is.
Yeah.
There we are. Ross Hookman. Hi, Ross.
Hey, Ross.
Bass player from Denver here. And I love TPS. I know I'm a minority, but I'd love to see more bass guitar content. We love pedals too. Cheers, Legends.
Yeah.
Okay, Ross, this is just for you.
Very good.
There you go. That's all we need to know about bass playing.
Yep.
Oh, and
It's more Polaroids from Tracy as
Yeah.
opposed to pictures. Yeah.
yeah. Digital representations of Tracy.
NTFs of Tracy. NFTs of Tracy, yeah. Thank you, Dyslexia.
That is actually a Frank Zappa bass line, by the way. But I can't sing the words because they're too rude.
Okay. You're quite good on big guitar. Yeah, man.
Which is Come On, Come Over by Jacko Pastorius. And if you want to hear it played properly, listen to Jacko play it.
That's pretty good.
With Sam and Dave singing. Come on, come over. Yeah, we should do more bass stuff.
We should do. It's
just so hard.
Yeah, it's the tricky thing with
I want
bass
to say
stuff.
thanks to bass players.
Yeah.
Thank you for making
Yeah.
it possible for
Yeah.
us to do all that.
Yeah.
All the unnecessary.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to sit there and go.
Albert Colo. Sorry, no question from you, Albert, and I'm sorry if we missed it. Obviously, this is we're doing this after the fact, so really sorry if we missed your question, Albert. But to mention you and thank you for your super chat. Offset Modman, legs. I bought another vintage guitar. See, when we start using this sort of terminology, I think we're actually moving in the right direction as a species.
Okay.
I bought another vintage guitar.
Yeah. Should be a...
Yeah. When you go into kindergarten, instead of saying stuff like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, banana, apple, they should start going, I bought another vintage guitar.
Yeah.
It should be part of the curriculum.
Yeah. I don't think it should be a religion, but I think it should at least be a verse in the book.
Yeah. 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 I like it.
Yeah. Great. We're on to something.
And on the 7th day, I bought another vintage guitar.
Yeah.
To save from resting.
We'll make it a religion and we'll get all the tax back.
We're talking about don't pay any tax. No. Anyway, he's bought a country jet. A 1960 country jet.
Oh.
He says, I'm 55. I think we can relate to that. He says, do you think the younger generations will continue buying vintage guitars, and what will they buy?
Well, they're not making any more vintage guitars. That's the thing about them.
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because is red a vintage guitar?
Yeah, it's what, 2002, so...
It's almost 25 years old. There or there, yeah. Give or take enough time to miss a couple of Christmases.
Here's the question. Is it the manufacturing procedures back in the 60s and stuff that made these guitars so great? Or is it just age? Because if it's just age, then we'll always have vintage guitars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think buying them to play might be something that necessarily tails off, because the supply will shrink. The supply is only shrinking.
yeah.
So buying them to play might be less and less realistic as time goes on.
Think about Jimmy at where did he light the guitar on fire?
Monterey.
And he was like, okay, I'm going to light this guitar on fire. Give me one of the old ones.
Yeah.
So, 1964. And apparently that was it. Pulled down. That's the, was an L series Strat that he lit on fire. So our relationship with this, our relationship with this vintage thing is changed, and they're not all amazing guitars, but the amazing ones are truly incredible. Yeah. So time will tell if it's just time. I like that. That's another verse.
Is it just time, or is it time, or is there more time, or is it just time? I think that might be it. I'm just going to double check that is it. Unless I've done something really stupid, which wouldn't be. So how are you enjoying that guitar, Dan? Let me ask you a question.
I am besotted with this instrument. I get up every day and I look forward to playing it every day. Yeah, it's wonderful.
And how is that transferring to an electrified experience?
It's different, because it's so different than the telly plugged in. But it's a journey for me with the voice of this thing plugged in, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's pulling something different out, and it's really, really fun.
It's nice to hear it.
Yeah,
it's such a lovely thing.
Yeah.
Indeed, that is it. Thank you for your super chai. We're sorry we had to do this as a record and upload. We are going to sort it out with our network issues, whether it's external or internal, we're not sure. But consider this a commitment to being serious, to sorting it out, because we love VCQ, we love doing it, and we're very grateful for your questions, and we just like hanging out and having a nice time with everybody.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So we will get it done.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for being with us. This will go out as a podcast as well on the Patreon platform for those of you who are on Patreon. Thank you very much for so doing. And we'll see you Friday. This Friday's show is going to be a second in the series of us mixing preamps, power amps and speakers. And the 2 donor amps this week are a Mesa California Tweed and Dan's Matchless DC30. Yeah. But just to mix it all up, we throw in some vintage Celestion Alnico blues as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
It was really fun.
Yeah,
it was really fun.
Sounds better recorded than I remember it doing so in the room. But,
oh, good.
Yeah.
Great.
Groovy. With giant thank yous to everyone for being part of this community. We'll see you on Friday and again next Monday, maybe.
Yeah, Easter Monday.
We won't see you next Monday. No VCQ next Monday because
I'll get eggs to eat.
Jesus rose? Is that what happened on Easter Monday?
I think so.
Or was that Sunday? He had
Well,
a day off. He was tired.
Yeah.
No, let's not go there. See you later, people. Play us out, Dan.